Last time we took a look at the Sacred series for this channel, it was the original title released back in 2004. Outside of some minor quirks, it has aged surprisingly well as I played it all the way until completion with the Vampirus. The open world coupled with the diversity of characters to choose from makes Sacred a unique title amongst the vast ocean of Diablo likes. Fast forward to 2008 and we have the prequel strangely called Sacred 2. Instead of continuing the story of Sacred 1, this game takes place 2,000 years in Arcania's past. While it is still ultimately an ARPG, there are several new additions including a fully 3D engine, brand new characters to choose from, and several quality of life upgrades. There's a lot to talk about this game, so let's dive right in. So when you start the game, you'll notice a huge change right off the bat. Outside of the Seraphim, the entire roster has been changed, with Shadow Warrior, High Elf, Dryad, Temple Guardian, Inquisitor, and Dragon Mage being the replacements. Unfortunately, there isn't a Vampirus replacement, so we will go with the Dryad named Dryka to fill my bow cavalry fantasies. Each character can also choose between the light and dark campaign, along with their starting deity to add a ton of replayability. For Sacred 1, I started with bronze, but I decided to mix it up here by jumping right into the silver difficulty, along with picking the dark campaign. After an incredibly badass intro featuring Blind Guardian of all bands, you begin your journey with your character. Depending on which character you pick and your path ultimately determines where you will start out at. As a Dryad, we begin on an island and must make our way to the mainland. We also start out with a bow, but quickly find a blowgun to use. While the game is still ultimately an ARPG in the vein of Diablo and its counterparts, there's quite a bit of changes to go through here. The first one is with the presentation. Compared to the isometric 2D world of the original Sacred, Sacred 2 opts for a fully 3D world. Even though I do like the original game's presentation, the 3D world in Sacred 2 is absolutely gorgeous. The colors are incredibly vibrant and brings me back to that mid to late 2000s era of gaming. The world of Incaria is also much different, featuring a more futuristic vibe and tone with the way the cities and towns are designed. Some fans of the original may be put off by this change, but I actually quite like it. The only problem is that the camera is not fully flexible, meaning that the 3D world isn't fully taken advantage of. Since Sacred 2 was released 5 years after the original Sacred, there are the expected quality of life improvements. With the press of a button, you can quickly pick up everything around you automatically and no longer have to wait for your character to do it for you. This easily saves up on time and keeps the flow and pace of the game going. The treasure chest in town now has a shared belongings tab where you can put items there to share amongst your other created characters. This is a very welcome addition as you'll find many rare items that your character can't use but can be benefited by another. Other quality of life features include a mini map that can be adjusted, the ability to fast travel at any time, and a cleaner UI that doesn't have panels obstructing your view. Overall, these improvements are much appreciated. One aspect that I felt was a bit of a letdown, however, is the open world. Similar to Sacred 1, you have a huge world to explore and are free to explore it. In Sacred 1, each area was fairly diverse with their own set of enemies. Unfortunately, that variety is lacking here, as many of the same enemies appear across the map. It also doesn't help that the silver and above difficulty has enemies scaled to your level, meaning that there's less motivation to explore. It was fun in the original game traveling to a zone that was far above your level, then going to a lower level area to absolutely cruise by it. It was a great way to showcase your power. Now, that element is no longer here due to the level scaling. There are other minor changes that I may get to later in this review, but for now, let's look at what's still going to be a major part of the gameplay flow. The combat is basically the same here, with left clicking to attack your enemies and right clicking to use your abilities. Combos also make a return with the ability to freely create them without having to visit a combo master. The movement speed is definitely a bit slower this time around, although I didn't find it to be unbearable. One change to the combat I didn't like, however, came in the form of mounted combat. In Sacred 1, you were able to move and shoot at the same time. Considering my character was going to be range focused, this is what I wanted to build my character around. Unfortunately, your character will lock in place if attempting to use any ranged weapon on a mount. My dreams of becoming a bow cavalry person were officially ruined. Honestly, I find mounts in this game to generally be far too restrictive this time around. It is true that they have expanded the mounts you can find and even have a quest for each character to obtain a unique mount. Regardless, I found using mounts to be really only viable for traveling across the world. Outside of that, you can't use any combat arts when on mounts outside of your unique one. Sure, you can jump and do new stuff that you couldn't do in the original, but it doesn't make up for the far more restrictive gameplay. The prior Sacred had some bosses that you ran across, but they were often dealt with pretty quickly outside of a select few. Sacred 2 decides to add some incredibly powerful bosses for you to defeat. Some of these are actually quite creative and adds an additional layer of strategy for combat. Sometimes you'll have to creatively use your abilities to avoid damage and stay light on your feet. Outside of a few arrow sponges, these are overall pretty fun. As expected, you'll gain experience and level up. Similar to the first game, you'll gain one attribute point and several skill points. You'll also be given the ability to pick your skills once you reach certain level milestones. Thanks to the tooltips provided, you are able to plan your builds a bit easier than before. One change I didn't like is the fact that certain skills cannot be reached until reaching skill level 5 within that bracket. This is an arbitrary restriction that locks out skills like the writing skill for really no reason. Unfortunately, there is no respecting your character, meaning you are stuck with your build. Considering how many skills that are available, it is much easier to mess up here than in the prior Sacred. The easiest way I found to gain experience were from the side quests, and holy hell, there are an absolute crap ton of them here. According to the back of the box on the Xbox 360 copy, about 600 objectives can be completed. How they've arrived to that number, I have no idea how, but it definitely does feel like it. You'll get some pretty interesting quests to complete, although many of them take a quantity over quality approach. This came out during the World of Warcraft era, where every game tried to cram as many of these MMO style fetch quests within their games. Despite the rewards gained from these quests, they can get very repetitive over time with the lack of diversity. It gives this game a single player MMO feel that the first game was able to cleverly avoid. But speaking on the MMO feel, it does seem like this game wanted to encourage players to play through Sacred 2 together. It would make the questing and overall game far more enjoyable as expected. Unfortunately, the servers were shut down a long time ago. You can still play land, although I was not able to get the GOG installer to cooperate with my XP machine. Either way, I can definitely see this being a more enjoyable in a LAN party setting than as a solo adventurer. Side quests and enemies also provide a ton of loot to use and take advantage of. Similar to Sacred 1, there's quite a bit of diversity when it comes to the weapons and armor to find. My favorite thing in these games is to build armor sets, which I found to be fairly easier to do here than in the first Sacred. It also helps that many of these armor sets and weapons look absolutely gorgeous. Stores also now sell uncommon equipment, making money a bit more valuable this time around. Still, you won't have any problem swimming in that cash money boy from all the loot that you'll be selling. While the world itself is still pretty interesting, the narrative is once again just there. The game story revolves around a source known as T energy. Over time, the T energy has leaked onto various creatures and has caused a bunch of mutations. This has led to the rise of many evil creatures roaming the land. Depending on the path you'll take will determine what side you lie on and how you'll ultimately deal with this problem. In practice, the Light and Dark campaigns are very similar in the objectives, as you'll be facing pretty much the same enemies and bosses. According to howlongtobeat.com, focusing on the main quest will take you about 25.5 hours to complete Sacred 2. Funny enough, this is about the same time it takes to complete the original Sacred. If you add in the side quests, you are looking at about 64 hours in total, which is just insane for an action RPG of this style. If you play a character on both paths and try to play at the higher difficulty settings, you'll easily crack 100 hours if you so desire. Safe to say, there is no shortage of content here, although 100% completion isn't what I would recommend for a game like this. It'll unfortunately get far too repetitive trying to complete all of the side quests. So earlier in this review, I talked about the change in graphical presentation. The same is also seen on the audio side, and it is done for the better. The music and soundtrack here is absolutely legendary, with amazing music found throughout. Whether it's the calming tracks from Navigating Arcania or the power metal song performed by Blind Guardian, this is certainly one that is easy on the ears. And before I wrap this up, I do want to give a message to everyone watching this video. If you decide to play Sacred 2, do yourself a favor and install the community patch. This fixes a ton of issues that were left unaddressed after Ascaron Entertainment went under. I didn't do that thinking I was going to be fine, and boy, I was wrong. To simple stuff like the UI not showing up, to major ones that prevented me from playing this game, there were plenty of issues that continued to pile on the longer I played. Overall, Sacred 2 2 is a good game that feels slightly disappointing from the original. Despite the gorgeous 3D world, quality of life improvements, and a kick-ass soundtrack, it is let down by the level scaling, numerous bugs, and lack of overall polish. To me, Sacred 2 is ultimately a side grade instead of a true improvement over the original. It's a bit of a shame too, since the developer ultimately went bankrupt during development. It feels like we never fully got to solve what the original vision was and what else would have been added. Heck, we would have at least had a proper Sacred 3, and that sounds like a very tantalizing timeline. Thank you all for watching as always, and this is Powerhouse, signing off.